Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Dolores Tarver. I'm a licensed psychologist here in Georgia, and it is time for the tea. Tea Time with Dr. Tarver is a wellness based podcast. It is not intended to be a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health provider. We made it. It is the last Tuesday in February. And we are so excited about closing out this series, Free to Be Me. We have talked about self love, that your worth is not tied to your relationship status, navigating new relationships, unhealthy relationship patterns, how unhealthy and critical people can make us shrink, tips to let go of unhealthy relationships, and strategies for success in relationships in the same way we can have success in our careers. So I thought it fitting to end this season with one of my favorite things, which is affirmations. I often talk to people about affirmations, but I don't want to take for granted that we know how to affirm ourselves, even if we do know how to affirm others. So let's get into the affirmation episode. So, as usual, I'm going to close out with our scripture for today, our last scripture for this series, which is actually the same one we use for last week because I think it's fitting, which is that First Thessalonians 5 and 11. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. And I think it is important that as you look at your words of encouragement for this month, you are making sure that you are really embracing who you want to be. I am successful. I am confident. I am powerful. I am capable. I am self loving. I am grateful. And I think that those are all words of encouragement that have been consistent with this series. For your guided meditation, you're going to be looking at positive affirmations. And then I had to add a couple of other things because I do think apps can be very helpful. And so there are two apps that are affirmation based that I kind of like. One is called Think Up, and the other is External Sunshine. And if you have not had the pleasure, please make sure that you check out on YouTube Doggyland Affirmations, which is featuring Snoop Dogg. And I know you're like, Snoop got affirmations? In fact, he does. And they are adorable. So, if nothing else for a laugh or just to remind yourself, like, if Snoop can do affirmations, oh, I can handle this. So, this episode is dedicated to Elder Lavisha Williams. She actually made an affirmation video for me years ago, probably 1999, 2000, before the pandemic hit. And on this journey to becoming who I am and walking in my purpose, she actually created a video for me to model how to show up for myself because she showed up for me in that video. And so, shout out to her. And for anyone in your life who is your hype person, who is the person who sees you even when you don't see you, for that person who recognizes your worth and your value, this episode is also dedicated to them. So, what is an affirmation? Affirmations are positive statements. And the goal of affirmations is to reinforce how we see ourselves, what we're able to do, our capabilities, our values, our goal, and any other positive attributes that we have. Because often we struggle to affirm what we do, even though it may be much easier for us to affirm what other people do. The goal of affirmations is to replace our negative self talk. We know that negative self talk shows up, is so disrespectful, uninvited, brings guests, they fix plates, they didn't bring anything, they keep all kinds of hours, and it does not matter what you do. They are relentless if you give them the stage. And so, one of the things that affirmations does is it allows us to be able to combat that negative self talk, to lower the volume, if you will, of our self critic. And that allows us to be able to be more successful as we're working toward goals. Now, the thing about affirmations is they should be I focused, right? We want to begin with something that reflects who we are because, again, it's for us. And so it can be identity based, goal based, action based. We do want it to be present focused. They're typically short, and we want them to actually be placed where we can see them, right? And so there, we're going to talk about some examples of what that would look like. But they are one of the best examples I can think of self-love, and they allow us to be able to see ourselves with a different set of eyes, because sometimes we are very hard on ourselves, and the rubric by which we evaluate ourselves is very skewed and biased, though the rubric we typically have for others gives them a lot more grace. So affirmation evens that out, if you will. So why are they so hard? I mean, the easiest answer is we don't believe them. We think we're lying to ourselves. And it is absolutely difficult for our brains to fathom that I'm saying something out loud that I don't actually believe is true. We can think they're silly. A lot of times that's what my clients will say, like, oh, that sounds so silly for me to say that out loud. And it is because we don't believe it to be true. We don't believe it's going to work. I don't actually believe that I'm worth saying these affirmations to. I'm not of value. What difference does it make? And because we haven't sometimes addressed things that cause our negative core beliefs, then it can be very difficult for us to actually fathom the idea of this. Because if I say I believe that I can be safe, when in fact I've been in these unsafe situations, possibly I'm in an unsafe situation now, it's very difficult for me to actually believe that that is plausible. And so it goes against my reality. I don't have evidence that it's true. I have evidence it's not true. Again, if I were lovable, people wouldn't be leaving me. I wouldn't be single right now. I wouldn't have such a bad history with dating people. And so it's very easy for us oftentimes to point out how this isn't working, how it's not true. And it can be very difficult for us to get examples of, okay, when would this affirmation truly be a reality? And affirmations have to be intentional. Whereas our negative thoughts, they're on automatic. As I said, they're disrespectful. They show up unannounced all times of the night and morning. Anytime that you have a free moment where you're not doing something, they're there. But affirmations are things we actually have to work to create. So it can be difficult for us to implement that, particularly consistent. Why does it matter? Why are they so important? Why are you all always telling us to do affirmations? Well, they matter because what we say to ourselves matters. It affects how we see our purpose, it affects our drive, our emotions, and our thoughts. And we know that those are the things that lead to us being able to set and achieve goals. For example, if you have positive affirmations, positive thoughts, they actually improve your health and they decrease your stress because you're able to let go of things that may be causing you to be depressed or anxious. At least not feeding them. Even if you don't get rid of them, you minimize the effects. They allow us to eat healthier and exercise and cope better and perform better in our school and work and social relationships. And that is because when we think positively, we believe positive things can happen. We're much more likely to do positive things. We're much more likely to focus on our wellness. We're much more likely to set those healthy boundaries. We're much more likely to love ourselves and interact with people who treat us in loving ways than when we have negative beliefs, right? Because again, if I don't believe I deserve something, then I'm going to allow people to treat me in ways that allow me to reinforce that I'm less than, that I'm inadequate, that I'm not enough. It's also important for us to have affirmations because if you can believe it, you've heard me say this before, you can behave it. It allows us to see our successes. Because if I'm in negative self mode, where I'm being self deprecating and self critical, then what am I going to be much more likely to focus on? What I didn't do right. Oh, you didn't get half the things on your to-do list that you had on your list. But if I'm thinking positively, I'll say, hey, here's the things that you accomplished today. Good job, right? It's a shift, restructuring the way that we think about ourselves. So, how do we do it? How do you get there? How do you get on board with these affirmations? It is important that we create an affirmation that is actually in the realm of possibility, that is plausible, that I can actually see it as attainable and I could make some movement in, right? I'm growing in my ability to set boundaries. Not that I have boundaries. I'm capable of making boundaries all the time, right? Because if I'm like, ugh, I didn't make boundaries yesterday, then I'm not going to believe that statement. But I'm growing in my ability to set boundaries allows me to see, well, hey, I am making some progress in it. And sometimes as we're trying to figure out whether or not something can be an affirmation, we do maybe possibly need to think about rating it to see if it's possible. So, how much do I believe this is true? If it's 3 or less, I might need to modify that. And if you're the type of person that everything is 3 or less, then I may need to recognize, okay, I'm being extra hard on myself. So here's how I can help address that. Allow it to be something meaningful for you. What is something that I want to improve in? What is something that is a hindrance to me, that it's showing up over and over again in my relationships, in my ability to complete things, to be consistent in my life? It has to have a why, if you will. And once I identify why I want to look at this area, then I can change the descriptors to fit. I'm capable of, I can learn to, I am working on, I can start, I can be aware, I am trying, right? So these give us grace. And it's important for us to be kind to ourselves in this affirmation process, right? That's part of mindfulness, being accepting, letting go of things that we can't control, not being judgmental, right? Being able to be loving to ourselves is something that has to be a part of this process too. One of the things that I think is also helpful is write your evidence down. What evidence do I have to support that I'm growing, I'm capable of, I'm working on, I can learn to? Because sometimes we're dismissive of things when it's not exactly all the way where we want it to be. Okay, well, I ate healthy Tuesday, but Wednesday and Thursday I didn't. I ate healthy Tuesday. That's my evidence that I am working on, I'm capable of, I'm trying. And once you have that evidence, then you start to recognize that, okay, well, let me add to those behaviors that continue to affirm that behavior that I'm trying to change, right? So our behavior begins to match our thoughts. Just like our thoughts can affect our behaviors can affect our thoughts, right? So if I'm engaging in more behaviors that are walking in this space of affirmation, then I'm allowing more evidence to be created for this affirmation. It is so very important that we practice affirmations daily. I like for people to start and end their day with affirmations, but also throughout your day. One of the things that we recognize about our brain is we create pathways the more we think about something. So the more you practice this, the more you state this, then over time this pathway is created. My mother always used to say, we can burn holes in grass. The more we walk across a path, it's like we got acid in our feet, and you can see where people have played. We used to have a basketball goal in our backyard. You can see where people have played because the grass is all dead because y'all been over here stomping all it down. It's gone. Or that you cut through the backyard in a certain part so you can tell the path that's been worn down from people walking over it over time. That's what our brain does. The more that you do something, you create that pathway, and then it becomes automatic. And so now I've got some automatic positive thoughts instead of just these automatic negative thoughts. Also, get help, get support. You know, I had to do my plug for therapy, but I also want to do my plug for your support system. If you're struggling to be able to think of positive things, if you're struggling to be able to create affirmations, therapy can be helpful, but also talking to people that are loving and nurturing and supportive of your life, like who I dedicated this episode to, who can give you affirmations and you can say, oh, okay, that actually is something that's plausible because someone else gave it to me and they gave me this evidence. Now, we do want to be clear that whoever you are utilizing for support actually absolutely needs to be a healthy person, because if they're not healthy and affirming, all they're going to do is feed your negative self-talk. Those the apps that I talked about earlier. You can use podcasts as well as YouTube to help create those. You can Google affirmations and some of those apps that will allow you to be able to get affirmations daily. You can also sign up on listservs and get affirming things to come to you. And it's very important that you have a variety of things, because this speaks to the why I can't be consistent with it or I think it doesn't work. Because maybe I'm only trying one approach and I need to be trying multiple things, because sometimes we need to increase the amount of times we are hearing positive things because we're working so hard to reduce that negative critic. And that critic, it can be so loud. That voice is almost piercing. And because we get those 30 to 35,000 thoughts a day, a lot of them aren't things that we're actively thinking about, but they're like background noise. And so in the background, there's these negative critical thoughts. And so the more I put in place having these positive affirmations in my life, that I'm hearing them in the morning, that I'm hearing them by what I'm choosing to listen to. That's how I feed, right? Because we've talked about which dragon is going to win. If we have a dragon that's negative thoughts and one with positive thoughts, they're in a battle. Which one wins? Whichever one I feed. So I want to be feeding these positive thoughts throughout my day in a lot of different ways, visually, auditorily, in my actions and my behaviors, in my interactions with people as they're engaging me, that they're affirming. And that will allow me to be able to move from not believing it's true to being intentional about it, to practicing it, to it being automatic. Okay? Be well.